morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us here so early in the morning. My name is Gina Norman. I'm the General Manager for RIA Travel. I'm very delighted to welcome you here on International Women's Day to the Tourism Industry Council SA Tourism in SA Matters Policy Forum co-hosted with RIA Travel, along with special guest, the Honourable Stephen Marshall MP, Premier and Minister for Tourism. Before we make a start, please, if I could ask you to have your phones on silent. And I'd like to begin by acknowledging the Kaurna people, the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, and paying my respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are present today. RIA is really proud that we've recently received conditional approval of our Reconciliation Action Plan, and we look forward to continuing our work in this important area. A priority area for us is to continue to build the policies and support for cultural and nature-based tourism in our state to showcase South Australia's rich, diverse and authentic experiences. I would like to acknowledge our special guests here with us today, the Honourable Stephen Marshall, MP, Premier and Minister for Tourism, the Honourable Vicky Chapman, MP, Attorney General and Member for Bragg, the Honourable Rachel Sanderson, MP, Minister for Child Protection and Member for Adelaide, the Honourable Tammy Franks, MLC The Greens, SA, the Honourable Connie Benares, MLC SA Best, Jeff Allison, Deputy Chair of Tourism Australia, Eoin Loftus, Tourism Industry Council SA Chair, Bridget Mather, CEO of Coorong District Council, Greg Mackey, OAM, History Trust of SA, TiCSA board members, TiCSA partners and industry leaders and other esteemed guests. And finally, to all of you, thank you so much for joining us here for this very important event where we can put tourism front and centre where it deserves to be. I encourage you to connect with the TiCSA and RIA via social media this morning so we can make sure the voices of the tourism sector are heard loud and wide. RIA Travel is honoured to be co-hosting this morning's event along with TiCSA, and I'm extremely proud of our partnership to support tourism and our very important visitor economy. For us at RIA, travel has been a core part of who we are, and as one of the longest running travel agencies in the state, RIA Travel has been working with and supporting tourism operators like yourselves for more than 60 years. We know and care about the tourism industry and especially the people who work in it. Just last week, TiCSA and RIA Travel concluded a regional roadshow series across 10 different regions, with over 250 participants giving a voice and the opportunity to take an active role in shaping the future direction for tourism in our state. COVID was a key theme, no doubt, but we also heard about the incredible challenges of recruiting and retaining skilled staff. It's clear that issues driving skill shortages are complex and multifaceted and require a whole of government response. We also heard about the infrastructure needed to support the sector, particularly in our regions. That's why we're calling on behalf of our 780,000 members and our great state of South Australia for an ongoing regional tourism grant program to help improve local infrastructure and a state strategy to respond to the growing skill shortages to rebuild operator capacity. It's not an easy problem to tackle, but one that we are keen to work with partners like TiCSA to help solve. This morning we're all looking forward to hearing from the Premier about his vision and policies for South Australia's tourism industry as we look to recover and rebuild to our pre-pandemic glory and go beyond. Following the Premier's presentation, he will join TiCSA's Chair, Eoin Loftus, for our Tourism in SA Matters Q&A session, deep diving into the issues and opportunities that matter to you most. I would now like to welcome Eoin Loftus, the Chair of Tourism Industry Council South Australia, to the stage to say a few words.
Good morning. How are we? Early start. Everyone happy with that? Thank you, Premier, for the early start. Much appreciated. Great way to start the day. I also want to acknowledge that we meet on the land of the Kaurna people and pay our respects to their elders, past, present and emerging. The Kaurna people, our first Australians. Good morning and welcome to the Tourism Industry Council of South Australia Tourism in SA Matters Policy Forum Breakfast. Thank you to Gina and our great partnership with RAA Travel. It's a new partnership that we've got with RAA and it's been fantastic. Today's event, we're going to hear from the Premier really about moving our industry forward. We have a huge amount of very special guests with us today from the Liberal Party. Might do a roll call, so you know where people are in the room. The Honourable Stephen Marshall, present. The Honourable Rachel Sanderson, Minister for Child Protection. The Honourable Vicky Chapman, MP, Attorney General. Thank you, Vicky. Honourable Tammy Franks, MLC for the Greens. Honourable Connie Benares, MLC for SA Best. Coming, fantastic, thank you. And also two special guests, Jeff Ellison, Deputy Chair of Tourism Australia. Next on the list is myself, I'll remove that one. Bridget Mather, CEO of the Coorong District Council. Greg Mackey, OAM, History Trust of SA. Our TiCSA board members, if we could put your hands up, we're going to see Penny just over there. TiCSA board members, nicely spread through the room. Yes, check, fantastic. And our very valued TiCSA partners. If we just get a show of hands of our TiCSA partners. There's a few in the room, come on, don't be shy, thank you. Industry leaders and other esteemed guests. Running accommodation hotels in South Australia, I started in 1993, and in that period of time, I've seen significant challenges. Bird flu, SARS virus, the September 11 attacks, the global financial crisis. But nothing like the past 2 years. Drought, fires, the pandemic. I've never seen anything like it. It has challenged our sector in a massive way, its businesses and its people. Over the past 2 years, tourism has lost thousands of skilled employees to other industries. And I heard Gina before talking about in our roadshow that so many businesses are talking about the skills shortage as a massive issue. Talking to some of the hoteliers in the room today, talking about how flat out they are, which is nice to see, how flat out they are with events on in this particular month. But looking forward, will we need the same amount of staff that we need for this month? That's the uncertainty. Very sadly, we've lost numerous tourism businesses. The Tourism Industry Council is acutely aware of businesses that consistently ring our CEO, our team at the Tourism Industry Council in real hardship. It's been an incredible journey for so many businesses. Many of those members tried to hang on as long as they could. Some of them ultimately couldn't hang on any longer. Those businesses built over generations will take a long, long time to replace. In the positive, much of our regions have benefited from significant increased opportunity, and for that we're eternally grateful and absolutely thrilled. With closed borders for outbound travel, resulting in a boom in domestic tourism, especially from within our own state. And I often say that South Australians are amazing at supporting each other. I often tell the story of Spring Gully Foods, which brings me back where South Australians were called upon, I think it was by the advertiser, called upon to save Spring Gully Foods. I remember racing to my local Foodland and bought my first jar of pickles. I don't even eat pickles. But I wanted to be one of those South Australians saving a South Australian business. The same's happened with tourism vouchers to save businesses, not just accommodation, but tour operators as well. Not only the government have supported our sector, but so too our people. Our city has also benefited from growth in domestic leisure travel. But without interstate, international, corporate, government and conferencing-related travel, the numbers are significantly down in our city. Hit hardest, and we need to acknowledge, have been our tour operators, attractions, conferencing, events, backpacker and CBD hotel businesses. There simply hasn't been enough demand off the back of multiple lockdowns, extended closed borders and various ongoing restrictions, all measures to keep us safe. This being my second state election as chairman of the Tourism Industry Council, in the lead up to this state election, I could see it was going to be critically important. Critically important to establishing the best agenda to drive the best policy and measures to best achieve the fastest recovery of our state's tourism sector. I suggest that this state election's outcome will prove pivotal to how well our state's tourism industry recovers. Businesses alone cannot recover and rebuild our tourism sector. Critical is government vision, government partnership and government support, especially for a sector that's made up of 95% small businesses. The state of our South Australian tourism industry, for the latest figures that we have more figures coming out at the end of this month. Expenditure, we have a target of $12.8 billion by 2030. We reached a peak of $8.1 billion. Currently, we're down $2.2 billion on that figure. We're down 27% at $5.9 billion. Down 27%, but our CBD, our city, is down 47%. So it's quite disproportionate across the state. A lot of people are amazed at this figure of how many jobs are within the tourism sector. Previously, we had 40,000 jobs, over 40,000 South Australians directly employed in our sector. Our forecast, we don't have a firm number on it, but our forecast, we're down 27% on expenditure. We're down 10,000 jobs within the tourism industry in just the past 2 years. The Tourism Industry Council's own Tourism Industry Barometer, October to December 21 period, 64% of respondents had seen a significant reduction in business to December 21. 43% were still open, but with reduced staff and reduced operations. And over 60% at least worried or very worried about their business prospects for the next 12 months. The Tourism Industry Council, we would be in our 12th year, we've never seen a survey result like it. The Tourism Industry Council of South Australia, its board, CEO and team got busy in the middle of last year to consult extensively with our members, the broader industry and stakeholders, to establish the industry's priorities towards best achieving a rapid recovery for our state's tourism sector. In January, I didn't bring it up with me, you've got it on your tables there. In January, we released our 2022 Tourism Industry Recovery Agenda. Everyone sees that on their tables there? It's a beautiful publication, but the contents are the most important. We're very proud. The Recovery Agenda outlining our top 5 priorities and our ask an additional $81 million per year for the next 3 years, representing less than 1% of the expenditure target of $12.8 billion. It's great to see people grabbing a copy of that, and I welcome you to take it with you. It is industry's voice that is represented in that paper, really highlighting what industry see is critical for our recovery. The top 5 priorities. Number 1 that consistently comes up happened last day of election, has happened previously, is driving demand. A stimulus package, strategically targeted and competitive in scale, to attract at least our market share nationally. Again, over our 1,000 members and engagement with industry, it is the number one priority. Number two was infrastructure and experience development. And I have to acknowledge the South Australian Liberal Party have certainly focused heavily in this particular area in their policy commitment announcements to date towards the state election. New investment in demand-driving infrastructure and experiences that are world-class. And the world-class is critical, not best in Australia, the best on the planet is what we're aiming for. Number three is business capability and workforce, the greatest challenge that we hear from our tourism members and businesses. Industry-specific initiatives targeted specifically at addressing our skills shortage crisis, enabling businesses to recover and grow once more. I think March is a classic example. It is it's almost unprecedented. It's the strongest trading that I've seen. I run 6 accommodation hotels across the state. It is the strongest trading I've seen in COVID in the past 2 years. But unfortunately, I think like so many businesses, we don't have the workforce actually to meet the demand. So it's a critical challenge for the industry and government to work in partnership to solve that problem. Number four is business restart and reinvestment. The right support, and I'm going to use your quote here, Sean, and it's a great one, shared with the Treasurer a few weeks back. A hand up rather than a handout. A hand up rather than a handout. Our sector is not about handouts. Our sector is about enabling us to grow, to create jobs, sustainable jobs, and take the responsibility ourselves. That's what the tourism sector has always wanted to do in the right environment and always will do. Number five of the 5 priorities, partnership and collaboration. Tourism benefits flows to our regions, and that's so important, and has a positive impact on so many other industries. But there needs to be central strategic coordination across almost all government departments, as the majority of government departments play a role in tourism. We did a great little exercise listing all of the government departments and working out which were the most important or important at all towards the tourism sector, and we pretty well listed off every government department has a huge part to play in driving our sector forward. The Tourism Industry Council of South Australia as the key industry advocate for tourism in this state has informed and challenged both sides of government to not forget tourism and its potential to deliver $12.8 billion in expenditure and tens of thousands of jobs for our state. Coming to the election, a key concern of mine was that tourism would get forgotten. There are so many competing priorities, I feel, for any government, especially at these times. There are so many competing priorities with health, education, transport, so many different areas. Where does tourism fit within that priority ranking? I'm thrilled that tourism is seen as an economic priority for this state. It is a great jobs generator, and importantly, it really brings prosperity to our regions, which is so critically important. Tourism has in recent years been elevated as a key government economic priority of our state. Tourism has been one of the most heavily impacted sectors of the past 2 years. For government to not totally focus right now on working with industry to best address the expenditure and, most importantly, the jobs that have been lost, will set us back significantly against other states that have already committed heavily towards their tourism industry's recovery. We look forward to hearing today from the Marshall Liberal government to their commitments for the critical period that lays ahead for tourism in our great state. Our tourism industry has been notched down numerous times, but we are still here, ready to stand up again, contributing once more in a significant way towards our state's prosperity. Thank you. So I have a new role. I'm to now welcome the Honourable Stephen Marshall, Premier of South Australia, to the stage. Premier, I've just got to grab my questions. Is that okay?
You've asked me to give a little...
Oh, sorry, you're doing your speech? I'll grab the question. Thank you.
I'm only doing what I was asked to do, but I do know that I might have to make it a little bit speedier because I think we're meant to already start the panel by now. But can I just begin by acknowledging that this morning we're meeting on the traditional lands of the Kaurna people. We acknowledge their ongoing spiritual relationship with this precious land. Can I also say happy International Women's Day? For those of you who haven't had a chance yet, for those of you who haven't had a chance yet, it would be really good for you to have a look at the excellent address by Her Excellency, the Honourable Frances Adamson, AC, Governor of South Australia, with her plea to people in South Australia today to break the bias, the theme for this year's IWD. She talks about her career, she talks about how she's helping the next generation, and she says to us all that we shouldn't be doing it just for one day or 1 week per year. We should be doing it 365 days per year. And also, I would just like to acknowledge that Dr. Helen Marshall, no relation, has been named the Advertiser Sunday Mail Woman of the Year, and she's been somebody who has been extraordinarily useful during the last couple of years with the coronavirus, because her area is vaccine development. So she was the South Australian of the Year, she was our nominee for the Australian of the Year this year, and of course she's now the Woman of the Year. So I think it's something for all of us to consider, not just this day, but every day of the year, breaking that bias. I became your minister 2 years ago. In fact, I remember my first TiCSA meeting, we were down at the Wavell Showgrounds, and I was asked, I think by Owen or maybe Sean, what are the priorities for you taking over this role? Why have you taken over this role? We just had those devastating bushfires. I was very good friends with Will Hodgman down in Tasmania. He said the best thing you could be doing is taking the tourism portfolio yourself and giving it drive right across your entire cabinet. Referencing the point that Owen makes, that so many areas of government has an impact on the tourism sector. So I took that role, and it was fantastic excitement about taking on this role. In particular, I spoke at that meeting about nature-based tourism, which I thought was an incredible opportunity, and I also talked about spreading out the events in South Australia. So we didn't just have Mad March, but we had visitors coming to South Australia right throughout the year. I talked about how we would integrate with the Department of Environment and Water, how we would integrate with the Arts Department, so that we could just have a whole-of-government approach to really lifting the overall performance of tourism. 1 month later, the coronavirus arrived. What a bitch. Nobody could have predicted it. And it really was a frightening time for us here in South Australia and right around the world. I'm very proud of the way that we have worked together to respond to the coronavirus. It's been extraordinarily tough, there's no doubt about it. But at the moment, South Australia has the fastest growing economy in the country, and we've had the fewest days in lockdown of any jurisdiction. But there are some sectors which have been disproportionately hit, and obviously tourism, travel, the hospitality sector, people in the CBD, people living on the borders have been the most impacted by the coronavirus. Now, I think we are very close to coming out of the coronavirus pandemic. I'm very excited by that. I'm very excited that on Saturday night you could not book a hotel room. Isn't that a fantastic marker of where we are compared to where we were just 4 or 5 weeks ago? But there is still work to be done. We cannot be complacent. We've got to make sure that we continue to isolate people who are COVID positive so that we don't have a second wave here in South Australia. I've got to say, when we came to government, we said we wanted to grow our economy. I think most people appreciate that Liberals will always have a stronger growing economy. We've certainly delivered that, but it doesn't happen by accident. It happens with focus. When we came to government, we identified 9 areas that we would concentrate on. And one, of course, was the visitor economy. And we did work with the industry, and under David Ridgway launched our visitor strategy, a 10-year plan to take our sector from $7.6 billion per year up to $12.8 billion by the time we get to 2030, creating an additional 16,000 jobs in South Australia. We were on track. In fact, prior to COVID, we had our record of $8.1 billion. COVID obviously impacted that. Last financial year, we, as Eoin was saying, contracted the sector down to $5.9 billion. I've got to tell you though, that was better than the forecast that I received from the SATC, which on national and international comparison said that we should be down at 4.9. Why did we get to 5.9 when the forecast was 4.9? Well, I say it is the industry that we have here in South Australia. The way that people could flex and pivot to alternatives here in South Australia. It wasn't easy. We've had 9 rounds of stimulus and support, giving grants to businesses that are most affected. We have had a bias for those businesses in your sector and also in the CBD. We've also had our own stimuluses in terms of demand. So one, support, the other, stimulus. On the stimulus side, of course, the great state voucher has been copied around the country. It has driven demand. It's been a great way of not only creating immediate demand, but getting people in from, I suppose, new target markets to come and try a product for the very first time, hoping that they will then rebook again and again. We were the first state to open up for regional travel. That has been, if you like, the saving grace of this coronavirus for our state. It has really driven a lot of people to regional South Australia to experience incredible regions in this state. I'm very proud, like Eoin is, that South Australians respond to a call, and they've done that in huge numbers. We've had people out exploring their own backyards while the international border was closed, and that's great. And I don't think we will go back to where we were before. In fact, I think South Australians have got out, explored their backyard, like what they've seen, and many of them have booked for next year and the year after. So it has been good months. In fact, we've had 7 consecutive months last year where we had record regional visitation, record regional spend. But we've still got much more work to do. We are seeking re-election in South Australia. We've only been in government for 4 years, 4 years in the last 20. It's not a good record. We want to make sure that we can do something about this at the upcoming election. Because we really do want to make sure that we can make this state as strong as it possibly can be and open up opportunities for the next generation. And some of those opportunities are definitely in your fantastic sector. So what are we going to do if we get elected? Well, first of all, as you would all appreciate, not only did we have the stimulus of the Great State Voucher, we also had the Tourism Industry Development Fund. Now, this was previously funded. It was cut by the previous Labor government. When we came into government, people said, look, this was really helpful at lifting the amenity, lifting the quality of product right across the sector. We had a focus on regional South Australia. We put $20 million in 114 projects. They were extraordinarily well conceived by the sector. We didn't pay for all of the work. In fact, the 30% contribution, our $20 million actually created a total spend in excess of $80 million. And I think everybody agrees when they go out and have a look at regional South Australia. The amenity, the quality, the facilities, the beds, the experiences are at an incredibly high level. And I think it's also created a little bit of competition because there'll be a business in an area that is upgraded and the neighbours are sort of thinking, well, I might do something like that myself. And so I think it's absolutely fantastic. That's one of the reasons why we've announced $25 million over the next 5 years, so $5 million per year, again to go into regional South Australia with the Great Doors Fund. We also want to have international tourism return. We are working with the SATC, Nick Jones in particular, on how we get all of our flights back. But we don't just want our old flights back, we want new flights back. And we've got ambition to have direct flights from the US, from Japan, and also from India. So we've established an $18 million direct flight incentive scheme in South Australia. We're in negotiations with various people. It's crucial that we have direct flights into South Australia. It's crucial for the tourism sector. It's also crucial for exports of South Australian product. If you have direct flights, you have much greater access to those international markets. Now, overall in South Australia, we have got great connections with the West Coast in the US, especially with what we've done at Lot 14, our focus on space, our focus on cyber, our focus on the screen sector. We've been able to show and demonstrate to the US carriers that there is demand here in South Australia. Product out, investors and tourists into South Australia. So I'm hoping that that will be something that we can talk very positively about in the coming months. Obviously, skills are important and we need to continue to work with the sector. Yesterday we announced a record investment into skills in South Australia. So not only the 347, which is already in the budget, but a further $12 million to create another 12,000 apprentices in South Australia in critical areas of skill shortages. And your sector is one of those sectors which of course has skill shortages at the moment. We've also said we're going to knock out all payroll tax for apprentices and trainees in South Australia. So we make it even better and easier and more profitable for you to employ somebody and participate with the government in the skills development for your sector. We've been out talking about the Riverbank Arena. Now I know other people have got other terms for the Riverbank Arena. I've heard it being referred to as a basketball stadium. Now there will be 12 games of basketball there per year. I do point out though, the Adelaide Entertainment Centre has 15 funerals per year. I don't hear the opposition referring to the Adelaide Entertainment Centre as a funeral parlour. It is going to be a very genuinely important piece of critical infrastructure which is missing from South Australia at the moment. Too many of our conferences are going interstate. We've created a list of all the conferences that we can bid for in South Australia if we could expand that convention footprint. We also want to have more live music in South Australia. Look, I love the entertainment centre. We probably all had a fun night there, seeing a great band or seeing a great performance, or maybe going to the basketball, or maybe going to a funeral. Who knows? But the entertainment centre is tired, it's in the wrong place, and it's too small. And so the Riverbank Arena really does provide, I think, an incredible opportunity for our state. It will enliven the CBD, it will create jobs in construction, it will create jobs on an ongoing basis. Most importantly, it's a piece of investment that makes a return every single year. Not often can governments invest in a piece of infrastructure that gives a return to the taxpayers. This will give a return which will go into providing those services on an ongoing basis. We want to also continue to develop the riverbank right throughout South Australia, right throughout Adelaide, and so we put money aside to develop the Linear Park, which we think is a great piece of infrastructure. We want a master plan for the entire Linear Park. Some of it is fantastic, some of it is very tight. So we need to lift the amenity right the way along the Linear Park. Part of it is also another $7.5 million going into to the Adelaide Zoo. They've been doing some extraordinary work. I was up at Monato the other day, another project that we've worked with the Zoos SA on, with the federal government and our own money. It is going to be incredible, but we also need to continually develop the Adelaide Zoo, a great visitor attraction here in South Australia. We'll continue to open up our reservoirs and our forests in South Australia. We do that because we know it's really, really good for regional businesses that might be in and around those reservoirs, and so we know by speaking to people down in the Myponga area, for example, that they have had enormous uplift in visitation. That's great for local businesses. It's most importantly good for jobs. And finally, of course, we're going to continue to invest in Memorial Drive. I think this is going to create a fantastic new facility right in the centre of the city, which will be able to attract, again, conferences to Adelaide and be able to attract sporting events to South Australia, and of course to be able to have some concerts. I think we all remember going to Memorial Drive for a concert at some point in time. It's a great new piece it's a great new facility for South Australia. I don't know whether people got along to the Adelaide International, but I certainly did. It was fantastic, and that is now locked in for the next 10 years, but there are so many other things that we can be doing with that upgraded piece of infrastructure. The election is in a few days' time now. Eoin made the point that this is going to be a crucial election for South Australia. I genuinely believe it is we're at a fork in the road here in South Australia. I think what we've seen over the last 4 years is South Australia developing, even through a coronavirus, the fastest growing economy in the country. We also have record exports out of South Australia, record investment into South Australia. We've stopped that brain drain out of our state, and in fact we have the first reversal of the brain drain in 20 years, and the second in only 40 years. And I think the momentum is now with our state. We have record employment in South Australia, and now is really not the time to be taking a risk. Now is the time to back a continuing government with a reform agenda which has proven that it is good for industry overall, and has a plan to make sure that all industries, crucially your sector, has the voice of the government. I will continue as the Tourism Minister in South Australia if I'm fortunate enough to be re-elected as the Premier of South Australia. I think it is a crucial sector. It has our focus right across the Cabinet. Will continue into the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you both to the Premier and to Eoin for their speeches, and no doubt that has sparked some questions for you, so I'd like to invite Eoin back to the stage to conduct a Q&A with the Premier on all those burning questions.
So much to cover, so little time, Premier. I think we got.
Well, I get my speech for time.
You stuck to the script, I didn't. Sorry. I really want to acknowledge. I want to bring you back to January 2020, and the Premier referenced it before when he made the decision to become Tourism Minister for our state, and. I was at my beach house down at Middleton, and my phone rang at 7:30 in the morning. I've been out the night before at the Port Elliot pub, and I thought, is that the phone ringing? And I let it go through to the keeper. I then listened to the message after, and in bed, and it was, good morning, Eoin. This is the Premier of South Australia, Stephen Marshall. I'm just advising that I've decided to be Tourism Minister, and I'd appreciate it if you could just give us a call back. I said to my wife, that's the Premier that just rang me. It's the Premier. It's an incredible moment. But I raised that story because it has been unprecedented, the access that Premier Marshall has given not only to the Tourism Industry Council, but to so many other industry sectors. Through COVID, the Premier set up 4 industry bodies, initially with CEOs and chairs, and then just CEOs of industry bodies, to give them a direct access to the information about what was happening behind the scenes, to navigate our state forward, engaging with industry, listening to industry. I really want to acknowledge the Premier for that, and most of all on behalf of our sector and the Tourism Industry Council. A lot of people have said to me, if there's one question that I'd just love a little bit of an insight into, it is, what does a day in the life of a political leader look like in an election? I've had all sorts of things. I wonder what time they get up, what time do they go to bed, who irons the shirts was one question someone put up. Who irons their shirt?
Tip top.
Tip top. It's a 7-day-a-week job. I don't know what time in the morning they start, what time they finish. Can you just give us some insight? What do they call it on the past end. What is it like out there over an election campaign?
I actually love it. This is my third election, so 2014, 2018 and 2022. It's very unusual for a political leader to actually go to 3 elections. I think John Howard did it, Jeff Kennedy did it, but it's very unusual. Of the 9 Liberal leaders in the country, the 6 states, 2 territories in the Commonwealth, I'm the longest serving, more than 9 years. The second longest is Scott Morrison, less than 3.5, because there's not a long time in the leadership of the political party. So I've really enjoyed it. I've enjoyed the 3 campaigns. I enjoy being out there meeting with people. I've always got up early. I used to come from the manufacturing sector, so I always set my alarm at 5:15 in the morning, but I'm always up before that. Read the papers. The first meeting, we have a sort of a phone round at 6 o'clock, and then you just off and running for the rest of the day. But I absolutely love it.
Your energy is amazing. I don't know how you do it. It's incredible. Coffee. And a nice plug for Tip Top Dry Cleaning there before as well.
Couldn't do that on the ABC.
The second question that a lot of people are saying, can you please try and get an insight into our COVID journey moving forward? What advice is the Premier receiving about the likelihood of another strain of this darn virus? I won't say what the Premier referenced to as before, but what is the likelihood, what's the sort of intel as to, are we out of this, or is there significant risk ahead for us as well, especially coming into winter?
Well, look, I'm genuinely a very optimistic person, so I'm going to say that is it. We've dealt with Omicron. We can't be complacent, but the stat that I look at mostly now is just the number of people in hospital. We've flexed up our capacity in our hospitals, the equivalent of 393 beds that are available. At the moment, I think 105 beds are being utilised. Some people want to catastrophize and talk about the number that are becoming infected, and that is an important indicator, but we're not seeing them flow through to beds at the moment. So I think that what we said 6 weeks ago was that we would reduce the restrictions in 2 weekly tranches, so it gave us a bit of time to look at the effects of any of the lifting. There is no reason to think that we wouldn't be further lifting restrictions later this week, especially because those bed numbers have come down. If we go back 4 or 5 weeks ago, we had around 300 people in hospital, so that was sort of getting up towards being concerned. Having 105 people, I think, is a different level of concern. But we also don't want to just let this entire thing rip. So we've got to get that balancing right, and I think by and large we have got that balance right over the course. There will always be people that said you could have done this earlier, or you should have done this. Look, I think most people will look at the way that South Australia is responding and say that in total we've done extraordinarily well. But let's just make sure that we can finish it off and not go backwards over the coming months.
Absolutely. In terms of, we referenced that our sector was at 8.1 billion. It's down 2.3 billion to 5.9 billion. What policy settings do you feel will be most important towards driving that recovery?
Well, obviously, getting rid of the restrictions on the international borders is the #1 thing. But quite frankly, that was extraordinary. We know that international visitation makes up a lot of our industry sector here in South Australia. We're trying to optimise what we were doing with intrastate. When we could, we looked at interstate, but opening up the international borders is the game changer. It will take some time to come back, and that's SATC's job, is to make sure that they can stimulate that demand, and they of course asked us to make that further investment for that direct flight incentive, so that they could make sure that we could get those flights into South Australia as quickly as possible. So demand management is going to be crucial. We have, of course, had, I think now, 7 rounds, maybe 8 rounds of the Great State Voucher. They may be required going forward, but we'd be making sure that we weren't wasting money stimulating something that might already be high. Like at the moment, you know, you could actually argue that it's probably not as required at the moment. So I think making sure that we can fix any market failure with those tactical interventions will remain a focus for us going forward.
Actually, I've got a few text messages this morning. The advertiser had a 2-page spread on election commitments. On the right-hand side was the Liberal Party, and there was an announcement there about $20 million for sports vouchers. Was it sports vouchers or was it travel vouchers? Doubling the value of $200.
No, that's so. When we came to government, the previous government set up a policy to give $50 to school students in primary school to do a range of sports to give it basically a cost of living. We've taken that to 100 when we got elected. We've now taken it to 200. It's a COVID stimulus. What we want is people to have more money in their pockets. The reason why we want to do that is so they go and spend that money in our economy and we continue to have economic growth. So for a 2-year period, we're actually increasing those sports vouchers for families to make sure their kids can go off and play sport. We've actually taken it from reception right the way through to year 9. It's a 2-year stimulus. Hopefully a lot of that money will end up in your businesses because if families have got more money, that means that they can do more travel.
And Premier, you referenced $18 million to target international carriers to come to our state. The Tourism Industry Council are a huge supporter of that initiative. It's so important, not only for our CBD, but also for our regions as well. Another interesting thing that was in the paper, talking about the election commitments of the Labor Party, around over $2 billion, Liberal Party $1 billion. Can we afford $2 billion?
I don't think so. I mean, look, I don't think it's $2 billion. I think it's probably closer to $3 or $4 billion that they've made commitments for so far. Look, the Liberals will always be better at managing the economy. The Liberals will always be better at managing the budget. I'll just put it to you, there's one thing to make promises in the lead up to the election, it's another thing to deliver them on the other side of the election. I think we fulfilled nearly all of the promises that we made to the people of South Australia in the lead up to the last election. A massive build right across the state, schools, roads, supporting infrastructure, community infrastructure. These are the things which really matter to the people of South Australia, but you've got to balance the books as well. We are the only state that next year will be going back into the black outside of Western Australia. They're always in the black, they've got that coal, that iron ore, so they're always in the black. But we'll be the only state in the country which will be going back into the black next financial year. And that fiscal responsibility allows us to continue to invest in the state to grow our economy and to grow our jobs, and most importantly, to keep young people here in South Australia.
Brilliant. And as I said in my speech earlier, driving demand is the highest priority of our sector. Funds for the South Australian Tourism Commission to competitively target to at least maintain our market share. Is there a looming election commitment maybe on the SATC? But I have to ask because it keeps coming up.
I know you've asked for, what is it, $243 million? Wow, that's a lot of money. I think the reality is the SATC has got a budget. They've shown themselves to be particularly nimble and to focus that budget on things which are crucial. Obviously, at the moment, demand stimulus is important. They ask for the direct flight incentive scheme. We've provided that direct flight incentive scheme. There are other things that the SATC board has asked us to consider. Demand management is going to be crucial. As I said, it's going to be a combination of some longer term stimulus, things like the Riverbank Arena, things like TiCSA, the Indigenous Gallery, which is, I think, going to bring a lot of people globally to come and see this incredible facility. This incredible space, but we're also going to be working with the SATC on short-term stimulus like the Great State vouchers and other stimulus to get demand back to where it needs to be. We are still 100% committed to the $12.8 billion for the sector by 2030. That's going to take some work, but obviously opening those international borders, completely ending lockdowns and lockouts in South Australia will make a big difference. This is an incredibly resilient sector. We know that. We know that the hotels are full in South Australia. We know that this is the most livable city in the country, the third most livable city in the world, and so I think that demand will come back, and we'll be making sure that we can provide that stimulus we require.
Another key question that we get from our sector around skill shortages is outside of apprenticeships and traineeships, which doesn't help all tourism businesses. No. What sort of other measures will the Marshall Liberal government, if they're re-elected, focus on to really aid our sector specifically?
Yeah, well, I think it is a really important question, and I would just say in terms of sometimes you say that apprenticeships and traineeships don't always suit the sector. Can I say we have got the most flexible pathways for employers to take on apprentices and trainees now than we've ever had in the history of the state. under the previous arrangement, and quite frankly the arrangement that exists in every other jurisdiction around the country. It is really a cookie cutter approach. This is what we offer. If you don't like that, bad luck. What we've done with David Massoni as the Minister for Innovation and Skills is to really focus on bespoke responses that really speak to the issues in particular sectors. And so getting more involved with group training organisations, providing incentives for employers to take on a trainee or an apprentice for the very first time are things which we are doing already. I've spoken with one employer yesterday. She'd never taken on an apprentice before. She said it was just too big a commitment for her small business. But now we've been able to hook them up with a group training organisation. She can take that apprentice when they are needed, when they have high demand, but then send them back when they're not required. So these are the types of things that we're looking at the moment. But more specifically, can I just say, because David Massoni thought he might ask me this question, so he just gave me a couple of notes this morning. He said some of the things that we've done for the sector was to look at short courses. Micro-credentialing will become really a major opportunity for upskilling people into the future. But he has also put quite a number of short courses on the subsidised training list in South Australia, including digital skills for small business, visitor information services, travel, sales and customer services. So I know that we've also been able to provide TiCSA with I think around $1 million over 3 years for their tourism business capability support program, where you go out and speak to people about taking on apprentices and trainees. Skills development is a shared responsibility. It can't be done just by the government. In fact, if it was done just by the government, it would probably be a disaster. And so it is a shared responsibility between employers who want to develop skills for their sector and the government, which can provide that money. And as I said, the budget for next year is $347 million. We just announced a further $12 million yesterday. I think this is one of the areas we've performed best. But it's not to say that we don't have any skill shortages. We've had record employment in South Australia at the moment. I think there's more than 20,000 jobs on the go at the moment in South Australia. And I'm hearing your sector say, well, a lot of those jobs aren't actually in our sector. What we've got to do is to return certainty to the sector. I think that is happening. When you return certainty, then young people say, well, I want a career in that sector. It's been hard because your sector has been hit. People might get 50 hours worth of work 1 week, then there's a lockdown, and then there's zero. This is not good for people actually wanting to go into this sector, and that's why making sure that we can get that certainty back as quickly as possible, I think we'll see movement back in, because there are very exciting and rewarding careers in your sector.
Premier, you mentioned what the Labor Party want to call the basketball stadium. I may touch on it because we see it as a really important piece of demand-driving infrastructure. Conferencing and events is a critical part of our sector. The spend of conference delegates is significant, near $800 a day. It's a significant investment, 15,000 seat capacity. Tourism Ministry Council, great supporters of that project. Cost of doing business, not just in the lead up to the election, but looking back in the rearview mirror over your term, has been a big focus as well.
Yeah, in fact, that's exactly what we said in the lead up to the last election. More jobs, lower costs, better services, and I think we've delivered on all of those. But in terms of lower costs, just remember, we have massively reduced energy prices, water prices. We've removed payroll tax for all small businesses in South Australia. So when we came to government, the threshold for people paying payroll tax was $600,000, a payroll of $600,000 per year. It's now $1.5 million per year, which puts more money back in the pocket of employers. We do that as a stimulus for employment in South Australia. We've taken the axe to the emergency services levy in South Australia. We've tried to look at every single way that we can make the life of small business even easier. Last week we announced our $20 million small business package in South Australia, which is really going to respond to what we hear from so many small businesses that they have to do with this department for mediation, this one to get a license, this one to get a planning approval, and what we want to do is bring that all together into a one-stop shop for small business in South Australia. It will be digital, but we're also going to be putting small business support offices into free services A centres, so people can go and have a one-on-one meeting with somebody that can help them navigate dealing with the state government. That's a pilot. 3 sites in South Australia will be doing that, but I'm quite sure this is going to work. We've seen it work very well in New South Wales. That was the benchmark that we took a look at. So we'll trial that, and then hopefully we'll be able to roll that out extensively in the second term.
Thank you so much, Barry. I think we're out of time, but before I wrap up, I'd really like to highlight a key takeaway that I take from the Premier's comments today is that tourism is still an economic priority of the Marshall Liberal government. Further, with the announcement today that if you are re-elected, you will be Tourism Minister, highlighting the importance of tourism moving forward. So I'm really heartened by that. And also acknowledge the significant investment that the Marshall Liberal government, if re-elected, especially in infrastructure side, significant investment in infrastructure, cost of doing business, ongoing support there, and this skills piece. I think there's still a bit to work out in that space, but it was great to hear from Minister Pisoni in preparation for today that they're looking beyond just apprenticeships and traineeships, not taking away the importance of them, but it needs to be a multi-pronged approach to that challenge that our sector has. Please, a big thank you for Premier Stephen Marshall.
Thank you so much to the Premier and to Eoin for that great session, and hopefully some of the questions asked allowed you to dive into the key issues that are happening in your business. It is clear that the tourism sector plays a critical part in our state's economy in both driving economic prosperity and employment opportunities. There's $140 billion in additional savings in Australia through COVID, and there's $3 trillion worldwide, and we want a whole heap of that money to come into the state. As the Premier says, despite the past few years being extremely tough for the industry, what has continued to shine through is the incredible resilience and determination of people in the sector. And I've been in tourism for more than 25 years, and I've lived through the SARS, the MERS, September 11, Bali bombings, and many other challenges, and I felt like really what happened is they all happened on the same day when the world closed. And we went through an incredible time of uncertainty, and now what we're looking for is that certainty, and there's really good resilience and there's really good comfort with uncertainty so far in our industry, and the more certain we become, the more we will bring people back into the sector and have really rewarding careers. I've had a really rewarding career. I've had the fortune of learning so much and having the opportunity to develop leadership skills, develop service skills, and certainly leadership of others. And I think it's an amazing sector to be part of. I think it's a really noble calling to work in the tourism industry, and we help change people's lives and we help provide amazing experiences. And COVID has shown us we've got loads of possessions, but what we're really searching for is experiences and also memories, and that's what we bring to the sector. I'd very much like to thank Premier Marshall for his time today and acknowledge also Sean and the TiCSA team for their work in bringing this event together. Thank you so much for being here this morning on this lovely early morning. Hope you enjoyed your breakfast. And this concludes the formalities for the day. It was really important to hear why tourism matters for South Australia. And just as important is celebrating and recognising International Women's Day and the important contribution and achievements that women make to this industry and to all industries. So thank you once again and have a wonderful day.
It's nothing more than only God.